Dr. Park Ji-woo stared at the holographic display showing Kim Tae-ho's fight for the 20th time. As the Empire's leading expert on alien combat capabilities, she had studied thousands of arena battles. She had created detailed profiles of every known warrior species in the galaxy. But what she was watching made no sense according to any of her research. The human had not just gotten lucky. Every movement had been calculated and precise. He had analyzed the Razorclaw's attack patterns in real time and adapted his strategy accordingly. Most impressive of all, he had identified the exact weak point in the creature's armor without any prior knowledge of its anatomy. "Computer, show me the human's biometric readings during the fight," she said. The display changed to show Tae-ho's heart rate, brain activity, and hormone levels throughout the battle. Dr. Park felt her blood run cold as she studied the data. The human's stress indicators had actually decreased as the fight progressed. His brain activity showed patterns she had never seen before in any species. He was not just surviving, she whispered to herself. He was learning. Meanwhile, news of the human's victory was spreading through the Empire's communication networks. In gambling halls across 100 worlds, bookmakers were frantically adjusting their odds. Wealthy spectators who had lost fortunes betting against the human were demanding investigations into possible fight fixing. But it was the military commanders who were asking the most serious questions. General Lee Min-ho sat in his command ship, studying intelligence reports about Earth and humanity. What he read made him increasingly uncomfortable. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 50 years, but in that time they had never lost a war against any alien species they had encountered. They had turned every planet they colonized into a fortress world. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to get stronger and more dangerous with every conflict. "Sir," his aide said, "you have a priority message from Arena Command." The message showed footage of Tae-ho's second fight, which had taken place just hours after his victory over the Razorclaw. This time his opponent had been a thornback serpent, a creature that could regenerate lost body parts and produce neurotoxins that could kill most species in seconds. The fight had lasted longer than the first one, but not because the human was struggling. General Lee could see that Tae-ho was deliberately extending the battle, studying how the serpent moved and attacked. He was treating it like a training exercise rather than a fight for his life. When the serpent finally lunged for what should have been a killing bite, Tae-ho grabbed its head and twisted it in a specific way that made the creature bite its own tail. The serpent's own poison killed it within seconds. "How did he know that would work?" General Lee asked his science officer. "Unknown, sir. The serpent's vulnerability to its own toxins is not listed in any combat database. The human discovered it during the fight." General Lee felt a chill run down his spine. If humans could analyze and defeat bioengineered weapons this quickly, what would happen when Earth decided to expand its territory? What would happen when they encountered the Empire's main battle fleets? Back in the arena, Tae-ho was returned to cell among the other prisoners. Word of his victories had spread quickly through the ship, and the other captives looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. A large reptilian warrior named Crix approached him carefully. Crix belonged to a species known for their natural armor and strength, but even he seemed nervous around the human. "How did you do it?" Crix asked in broken English. "How did you kill the Razorclaw so easily?" "I watched how it moved," Tae-ho replied. "Simply, everything fights in patterns. You just have to see the pattern and find the weakness." "But these beasts are perfect killers," another prisoner said. "They were designed to have no weaknesses." Tae-ho looked around at the frightened faces surrounding him. These were supposed to be the greatest warriors from dozens of different worlds, but they all looked like they had given up hope. "Nothing is perfect," he said. "The creatures are strong and fast and deadly, but they were made by someone else. That means someone else decided how they think and how they fight. Once you understand the mind that created them, you can predict what they will do." The prisoners did not fully understand what he meant, but they could see the confidence in his eyes. For the first time since their capture, some of them began to think that escape might be possible. In the arena's medical bay, Dr. Yoon So-young was studying the results of Taeho's post-fight examination. The human had sustained only minor scratches in both battles. His muscle tension was actually lower than it had been before the fights. Most remarkably, his reflexes and reaction times were showing measurable improvement. It is as if combat makes him stronger rather than weaker, she reported to her supervisors. His body is adapting to the stress in ways we have never observed in any species. 3 levels below the arena, in the beast containment area, something unprecedented was happening. The combat creatures that were scheduled to fight the human next were displaying behavior that their handlers had never seen before. A void stalker that could phase in and out of normal space-time was huddled in the corner of its cage, making distressed noises. A thunder beast that could generate electrical attacks powerful enough to destroy vehicles was refusing to leave its holding cell. Most disturbing of all, a bone crusher that had killed over 500 warriors was showing signs of what could only be described as fear. The creatures can sense something, reported Chief Handler Pak Dae-sung. They know about the human somehow, and they do not want to fight him. The arena's administrators dismissed these reports as nonsense. Combat beasts were engineered to be fearless. They attacked anything that moved and fought until they won or died. The idea that they could be afraid of a single human was absurd, but the handlers knew what they were seeing. These creatures had been designed to be perfect predators, which meant they had also been given the instincts to recognize when they encountered something more dangerous than themselves. That night, as Taeho slept in his cell, emergency meetings were being held in government buildings across the empire. Intelligence officers were trying to gather more information about human military capabilities. Xenobiologists were studying every available record of human behavior and psychology. What they were discovering was deeply troubling. Humans were not just another warrior species, they were something entirely different. While other races had evolved specialized abilities for specific environments, humans had evolved the ability to adapt to any environment or challenge. They were persistence hunters who could track prey across continents. They were problem solvers who could create tools and weapons from anything available. Most dangerous of all, they were social learners who could share knowledge and tactics with incredible efficiency. If one human could learn to defeat the Empire's bioweapons in a matter of days, what would happen when that knowledge spread to the rest of humanity? In his cell, Taeho was not aware of the panic his victories were causing throughout the Empire. He was focused on preparing for his next battle, running through combat scenarios in his mind and planning new strategies. He had fought 2 creatures so far and learned something valuable from each encounter. The patterns were becoming clearer. The Empire's bioengineers were skilled, but they thought like engineers rather than warriors. They built their creatures to be powerful and deadly, but they also made them predictable. That predictability was going to be their downfall. As he drifted off to sleep, Taeho smiled slightly. The Empire thought they were entertaining their citizens with gladiator games. What they were actually doing was giving a human warrior a detailed education in their most advanced military biotechnology. Tomorrow, he was going to show them exactly how dangerous that education could be. Arena Master Cho Sung-min had overseen the combat trials for 30 years. He had watched thousands of prisoners fight and die for the entertainment of the masses. He thought he had seen every possible type of warrior and every conceivable fighting style. But Kim Tae-ho was breaking every rule he thought he understood about combat. The human had now won 7 consecutive battles against creatures that should have been impossible for his species to defeat. Each victory was more impressive than the last, not because the beasts were getting weaker, but because Taeho was getting better at reading them. His latest opponent had been a void hunter, one of the most feared creatures in the arena's arsenal. The beast could phase partially out of normal space-time, making it nearly impossible to see or target. Most warriors could not even track its movements before they were dead, but Taeho had tracked it perfectly. Cho Sung-min watched the fight footage again in slow motion. The human had not just avoided the creature's attacks. He had predicted exactly where it would appear when it phased back into normal space. His killing strike had landed at the precise moment the Void Hunter materialized, as if he had known exactly when and where it would happen. Computer, analyze the human's eye movements during the Void Hunter battle, Cho commanded. The display showed tracking lines following Taeho's gaze throughout the fight. What Cho saw made his hands shake. The human had been watching empty spaces, where nothing was visible. But those empty spaces were exactly where the Void Hunter had been while phased out. Impossible, Cho whispered. No species can see into phase space. But the evidence was undeniable. Somehow, the human was perceiving things that should have been beyond the capabilities of his sensory organs. Either that, or he was predicting the creature's movements with an accuracy that bordered on precognition. Dr. Park Ji-woo was having similar thoughts as she reviewed her latest research findings. Her team had been working around the clock to understand how humans could adapt to combat situations so quickly. What they had discovered challenged everything the Empire thought it knew about biological intelligence. Humans are not like other species, she explained to a gathering of military scientists. Most races evolve specialized abilities for their specific environments. Humans evolved something far more dangerous, adaptability itself. She showed them brain scans comparing human neural activity to that of other species during combat situations. The difference was startling. When other species encounter a new threat, their brains follow established patterns based on their evolutionary programming. But human brains create new neural pathways in real time. They are literally rewiring themselves to solve problems as they encounter them. One of the scientists raised a tentacle in question, but surely there are limits to this adaptability. Dr. Park shook her head grimly. We have found no evidence of any limits. The human's performance is actually improving with each battle. His reaction times are faster, his pattern recognition is more accurate, and his strategic thinking is becoming more sophisticated. She pulled up a chart showing Taeho's biometric data across all 7 fights. Look at these stress hormone levels. They should be increasing with each battle as fatigue and psychological pressure build up. Instead, they are decreasing. The human is becoming calmer and more focused with each encounter. The implications were terrifying. If humans could adapt to any threat they encountered, and if that adaptation made them stronger rather than weaker, then they represented an evolutionary advantage that no other species could match. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of the arena complex, something unprecedented was occurring among the combat beasts. Chief Handler Pak Dae-soon submitted his daily report with hands that trembled as he typed. The creatures scheduled to fight the human are displaying behaviors not seen in over 50 years of arena operation. The Stormwing refuses to leave its perch and has not eaten in 3 days. The Ironhide has been pacing its cage continuously and shows elevated stress indicators. Most concerning, the Nightmare Spawn has curled into a defensive position and will not respond to any stimuli. These were creatures engineered to be perfect killing machines. They had been designed without fear, programmed with unlimited aggression, and enhanced with the deadliest capabilities their creators could imagine. The idea that they could be intimidated by a single human should have been impossible, but Pak had been working with these beasts for 15 years, and he knew what he was seeing. The creatures were not just nervous or agitated, they were genuinely afraid. Sir, his assistant approached carefully. The bone melter has started making submission sounds whenever we mention the upcoming human fight. Pak stared at the assistant in disbelief. Submission sounds? Bone melters do not have submission behaviors. They were bred from pure aggression. Yes, sir, but it is definitely submission. The same sounds young bone melters make when approached by their mothers. Pak realized he needed to report this to his superiors immediately. If the combat beasts were recognizing the human as some kind of alpha predator, it meant something fundamental had changed in the natural order of the arena. In his private quarters, General Lee Min-ho was reading classified reports about human military history. The more he learned, the more concerned he became. Humans had been involved in armed conflicts for their entire recorded history, but they had never been conquered by any external force. Every species that had tried to invade human territory had either been defeated or forced to negotiate peace. On human terms, most disturbing was a report about human psychological warfare tactics. Humans had a documented ability to understand and exploit the weaknesses of their enemies with frightening efficiency. They could turn an enemy's strengths against them and find victory in situations that should have been hopeless. "They are not just warriors," General Lee said to his aide. "They are apex predators disguised as a civilized species. And we have just given one of them a detailed education in our most advanced military biotechnology." His aide looked confused. "Sir, it is just one human in an arena. How much damage can he really do?" General Lee pulled up footage of Taeho's most recent victory. "Watch how he moves. Watch how he thinks. That human is not just fighting those creatures, he is studying them. He is learning everything about how we design and deploy our bioweapons." The aide watched the footage more carefully this time. He could see what the general meant. The human was treating each battle like a research project, gathering information about alien biotechnology and combat tactics. "Sir, what do you think he plans to do with that knowledge?" "I think he plans to take it home to Earth," General Lee replied grimly. "And I think Earth is going to use it to build countermeasures against everything we have." Back in his cell, Taeho was sharing what he had learned with his fellow prisoners. He had been teaching them to recognize attack patterns and identify weaknesses in bioengineered creatures. Several of the other warriors had started winning their own battles using techniques they learned from watching him. "The key is not to fight the creature's strengths," he explained to a group of attentive prisoners. "You have to make its strengths work against it. The Void Hunter can phase out of normal space, but it has to phase back into attack. That moment of transition is when it is most vulnerable." A insectoid warrior named Zek clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "But how did you know where it would appear?" "I watched its eyes," Taeho replied. "Even when it was phased out, its eyes were still tracking me. I could see the reflection of the arena lights in them if I looked carefully enough." The prisoners stared at him in amazement. None of them had ever thought to look for such subtle clues during combat. "You are teaching us to see the arena the way you see it," Crick said, "like everything is a puzzle to be solved rather than a death trap to be survived." Taeho nodded. "That is exactly right. The Empire's engineers are very good at building killing machines, but they think like engineers. They follow patterns and rules. Once you understand their patterns, you can predict what their creations will do." As the other prisoners absorbed this lesson, Taeho was already thinking ahead to his next battle. The arena masters were getting desperate. Each new creature they sent against him was more powerful and more deadly than the last. But they were also becoming more predictable. The Empire was running out of surprises, and Taeho was just getting started. Tomorrow he would face something called a reality shaper, a creature that could allegedly alter the laws of physics in its immediate vicinity. The arena masters expected it to be his greatest challenge yet, but Taeho was looking forward to it. Every new creature taught him something valuable about the Empire's capabilities and limitations, and every lesson brought him closer to finding a way home to warn Earth about what was coming. The Empire thought they were watching a gladiator show. What they were actually witnessing was a military intelligence operation conducted by one of humanity's most elite warriors, and soon they would learn exactly how dangerous it was to give a human that kind of education. Kim Tae-ho sat in the cold metal chair and looked around the strange room. The walls were made of some kind of blue metal that he had never seen before. Strange lights blinked on and off above his head. His hands were tied behind his back with chains that felt stronger than steel. Just 3 days ago, he had been leading his team through the jungle on planet Kepler 442b. They were supposed to rescue a group of scientists who had gone missing. Taeho was a Navy SEAL commander with 15 years of experience. He had completed over 200 missions across Earth and 12 different planets. He thought this would be just another easy job, but everything went wrong when the ships came. Down from the sky, the ships were huge and black, and they moved without making any sound. Taeho had seen many different types of alien technology, but these ships were different. They had weapons that could freeze a person in place without hurting them. His entire team of 12 elite soldiers was captured in less than 5 minutes. Now, Tejo was sitting in what looked like a prison cell on one of those alien ships. The gravity felt wrong here. Everything was just a little bit heavier than it should be. The air smelled like metal and something else he could not identify. A door opened with a soft hissing sound. 3 aliens walked into the room. They were tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. Tejo had seen pictures of aliens like these in military briefings, but seeing them in person was different. They moved in a way that seemed both graceful and dangerous. The tallest alien spoke in perfect English. Its voice sounded like it was coming from inside a metal tube. Human soldier Kim Tejo, you have been selected for the combat trials. Tejo did not answer. His training had taught him to stay quiet when captured by enemies. He watched the aliens carefully and tried to remember every detail about them and the room. You do not speak, the alien continued. That is acceptable. Many prisoners choose silence at first. You will learn to speak when you understand your situation. The alien pressed something on a small device it was holding. The wall in front of Tejo became transparent like glass. Through the wall he could see a much larger room filled with cages. Inside the cages were creatures that Tejo had never seen before. Some of the creatures looked almost human, but with different colored skin and extra arms. Others looked like giant insects or reptiles. A few looked so strange that Tejo could not even guess what they might be. All of them looked scared. These are your fellow prisoners, the alien said. They come from 47 different worlds across the galaxy, warriors, soldiers, hunters, the strongest and most dangerous beings. Their species could produce? Tejo counted at least 50 different cages. Some held single creatures while others held groups of 3 or 4. He noticed that even the largest and most dangerous-looking creatures were sitting quietly in corners of their cages. They did not look like dangerous warriors. They looked like frightened animals. The combat trials are the greatest entertainment in the Veltharian Empire. The alien continued, prisoners fight against our specially created combat beasts. The winners earn their freedom. The losers become food for the next group of beasts. The alien pressed another button and the wall showed images of a massive arena. The arena was bigger than any stadium Tejo had ever seen. It could hold millions of spectators. The images showed different types of battles. Tejo watched as various alien warriors fought against creatures that looked like they came from nightmares. The combat beasts were not natural animals. They had been changed and improved by alien science. Some had armor that looked harder than tank metal. Others had claws that could cut through solid rock. A few could spit acid or poison that could kill in seconds. Your species file shows that humans have no natural weapons, the alien said. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no poison, no special abilities. Most species in the galaxy consider humans to be one of the weakest warrior races. Tejo still did not speak, but he was thinking fast. He watched the battle footage and began to notice patterns. The combat beasts were strong and fast and deadly, but they seemed to fight in predictable ways. Each type of beast used the same attacks over and over again. You will have 1 day to rest and prepare, the alien said. Then you will enter the arena. The betting odds against your survival are currently set at 10,000 to 1. Even the weakest combat beast has killed hundreds of warriors from species much stronger than yours. The images on the wall changed to show footage of previous human fighters in the arena. Tejo watched as other humans were torn apart by various beasts within seconds of the fights starting. None of them had lasted more than 30 seconds, but Tejo noticed something the aliens probably did not expect him to see. The other humans in the footage were not trained soldiers. They looked like civilians or maybe basic military personnel. None of them moved like they had real combat training. Do you have any questions before you are taken to the preparation? Cells, the alien asked. Tejo looked directly at the alien and spoke for the first time. What happens if I kill all your beasts? The 3 aliens looked at each other in what might have been surprise. Then the tallest one made a sound that could have been laughter. Human, you will be fortunate to survive 30 seconds against even our weakest combat beast. Your species has never produced a warrior capable of defeating our creations. That might be true, Tejo said calmly, but you have never faced a Navy SEAL before. The aliens did not understand what those words meant, but something in Tejo's voice made them pause. He was not speaking like a frightened prisoner. He was speaking like a predator who was already planning his next hunt after the aliens left. Tejo was moved to a larger cell with the other prisoners. As he walked through the corridors, he could hear the combat beasts in their holding areas below. They were roaring and snarling and making sounds that would terrify most people, but Tejo was not most people. He was already thinking about how each sound might tell him something about the creature that made it. He was planning how to use the arena environment to his advantage. He was preparing to show the galaxy what a human warrior could really do. When his back was against the wall, the other prisoners watched him with curiosity. They had all heard about the new human who talked back to the guards. Word was already spreading through the ship that something different had arrived in the combat. Trials.Te-Ho sat in his new cell and began to plan. He had one day to prepare for a fight that everyone expected him to lose in seconds. But he had survived impossible odds before. And now he was going to teach an entire galaxy why humans had never been conquered by any alien species they had encountered. The combat trials were about to get their first real taste of human warfare. The roar of the crowd hit Team Tejo like a physical force as the metal doors opened in front of him. The arena was even bigger than the images had shown. Millions of alien beings filled the stands that stretched up so high he could barely see the top. Their voices created a sound like thunder that never stopped. Tejo walked onto the sandy floor of the arena and looked around calmly. Above him, massive screens showed information about him in alien languages. He could hear laughter coming from the crowd when they saw his species listed as human. To them, he was just another weak prisoner about to die for their entertainment. The betting displays around the arena showed odds of 12,000 to 1 against his survival. Alien spectators were placing bets on how quickly he would die. Most were betting on less than 10 seconds. A few optimistic gamblers had bet on 30 seconds. The arena floor was covered in sand that had been stained dark red from previous battles. Broken weapons and pieces of armor were scattered around. Tejo noticed that some of the metal fragments had sharp edges that could be useful if he needed them. A voice boomed across the arena in multiple languages. When it spoke in English, Tejo heard his introduction. From the primitive world of Earth, a human warrior who claims to be something called a Navy SEAL, he will face the Razorclaw, winner of over 200 battles. The crowd cheered louder when they heard about the Razorclaw. This was clearly a popular beast among the spectators. Tejo could see aliens in the stands making cutting motions with their hands, imitating the creature's famous killing technique. A massive gate on the opposite side of the arena began to open. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the dark tunnel beyond. Then the Razorclaw emerged into the light. The beast was even larger than Tejo had expected. It stood as tall as a truck and was twice as long. Its body was covered in natural armor that looked like black metal plates. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could tear through steel. But the most dangerous parts were its front arms, which had been replaced with curved blades that gleamed like swords. The Razorclaw looked at Tejo and made a sound like grinding metal. Its eyes were intelligent and cruel. This was a creature that enjoyed killing and had been designed to be perfect at it. The crowd fell silent as they waited for the slaughter to begin. In the VIP sections, wealthy aliens leaned forward in their seats. They wanted to see every detail of how the human would die. But Tejo was not thinking about dying. He was studying the beast like he had studied enemy soldiers in dozens of combat zones. The Razorclaw was built for power and speed, but it was also heavy. Its armor would protect it from most attacks, but would also slow it down. The blade arms were deadly, but they were also the creature's only weapons. If he could get past them, the beast would have trouble defending itself. The starting horn sounded across the arena. The Razorclaw charged immediately. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. Its blade arms were extended like spears, aimed directly at Teho's chest. The crowd began cheering, expecting to see the human cut in half, but Teho was not where the beast expected him to be. At the last possible second, he dropped to the ground and rolled to his left. The razor claw's momentum carried it past him. Its right blade arm passed through the space where his head had been just a moment before. The crowd's cheering stopped. This was not how these fights usually started. The razor claw spun around faster than Teho had expected. It swung both blade arms at him in a crossing pattern that should have been impossible to avoid. But Teho had been watching the creature's shoulder muscles. He had seen the attack coming before the beast had even started it. He dove backward, letting the blades whistle past his face. As he rolled away, he grabbed a piece of broken metal from the arena floor. It was part of a sword that had belonged to some previous fighter. The razor claw attacked again and again. Each time it was sure it had the human trapped. Each time Teho was somehow somewhere else when the blades arrived. He moved like water, flowing around the creature's attacks without seeming to hurry. The crowd was completely silent now. They had never seen anything like this. Prisoners were supposed to run in terror or fight desperately and die quickly. They were not supposed to dance around the arena like they were playing a game. Teho was learning with every attack. The razor claw was fast and strong, but it fought in patterns. It always led with its right arm. It always followed up with a left cross. After 3 attacks, it always paused for exactly 2 seconds to reassess its target. On the beast's 7th attack sequence, Teho was ready. As the razor claw began its familiar pattern, Teho moved in instead of away. He slid under the creature's body as it raised its arms for the killing blow. The beast's own armor protected him from its claws as he rolled beneath it. While he was under the creature, Teho did something that made the crowd gasp. Instead of trying to escape, he struck upward with the broken sword fragment. But he did not aim randomly. He aimed for a specific spot where the armor plates met at the base of the creature's neck. The metal fragment slipped between the plates like a key into a lock. It severed the razor claw's spinal cord with surgical precision. The great beast collapsed onto the arena floor. Its legs twitched once and then went still. The razor claw, winner of over 200 battles, was dead. The arena was completely silent. Millions of alien spectators stared at the small human standing next to the massive corpse. The betting displays flickered and went dark as the computers tried to process what had just happened. In the VIP section, military commanders looked at each other with expressions that might have been worry. In the medical bay, doctors studied readings from sensors they had placed on the human. His heart rate had actually gone down during the fight. His stress hormones were lower now than they had been in his cell. Teho looked up at the crowds and raised the bloody sword fragment above his head. It was not a gesture of celebration. It was a challenge. He was telling every being in the arena that he was just getting started. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Then, slowly, a few aliens began to cheer. Not for the beast this time, but for the human who had just done the impossible. As Teho walked toward the exit tunnel, he could hear conversations starting in the stands. The word human was being spoken in dozens of different alien languages. Some sounded curious. Others sounded worried. In the beast holding areas below the arena, handlers were reporting strange behavior from the other combat creatures. For the first time in the arena's history, some of the beasts were refusing to eat their food. Others were pacing nervously in their cages. It was as if they could sense that something had changed in their world. The natural order of predator and prey had been challenged by a creature they had never encountered before. Teho did not know about the nervous beasts or the worried commanders. He was already thinking about his next fight and what he had learned from this one. The galaxy was about to discover that humans had their own definition of what made the perfect predator, and it had nothing to do with claws or fangs or armor. 3 months after the last Vex warship was destroyed, the Galactic Alliance held its first post-war council meeting on the neutral world of Kepler Station. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. That had been built for peaceful diplomacy. The agenda was supposed to cover reconstruction trade relationships and establishing new territorial boundaries. But everyone knew the real purpose was to understand what humans had done and what it meant. For the future Admiral Taewon addressed the assembled delegates with the same direct honesty that had characterized human military operations throughout the war. He explained that humans had not committed genocide against the Vex species. Millions of Vex were still alive on their homeworlds, living peaceful agricultural lives, but humans had permanently eliminated the Vex Empire's ability to threaten anyone ever again. The distinction was important to understand. Most species fought wars to achieve specific immediate goals, territory, resources, political influence, or defensive positioning. But humans were capable of fighting for the complete long-term elimination of threats. When humans said never again, they meant it in the most literal sense possible. Commander Hyojin presented detailed analysis of human military doctrine to help the other species understand what had happened. She explained that humans had studied warfare throughout their own history and learned that half measures in existential conflicts led to future problems. If an enemy was truly dedicated to your destruction, the only safe response was to eliminate their capability permanently. The alien representatives struggled to comprehend the implications. Captain So Young used simple examples to illustrate the point. When most species won wars, they would occupy enemy territory, extract tribute, and establish political control, but these approaches left the defeated enemy with opportunities to rebuild and seek revenge. Human doctrine focused on preventing that possibility. The casualty figures told the story. Lieutenant Dayan reported that human losses during the final phase of the war had been surprisingly minimal. By abandoning traditional concepts of honorable warfare and focusing purely on effectiveness, humans had achieved total victory with minimal cost to themselves. The lesson was obvious to everyone in the assembled. Political changes across the galaxy were immediate. Species that had been planning aggressive expansion programs suddenly discovered new enthusiasm for peaceful diplomacy. The hegemony of worlds canceled their military buildup against the Tau Republic. Border conflicts that had simmered for decades were resolved through negotiation as both sides realized they did not want to risk attracting human attention. The galactic arms market collapsed within weeks as governments decided they did not need expensive weapons that might be interpreted as threatening human interests. 3 separate wars ended abruptly when human diplomatic messages suggested that continued fighting might require human intervention to restore stability. Major Kyung-ho presented intelligence reports showing how human military doctrine was being studied by every major power in the galaxy. Some species were attempting to adapt human tactics for their own use. Others were completely redesigning their strategic planning to avoid ever facing human-style total war. Both reactions showed healthy respect for human capabilities, but the most significant change was in how humans saw themselves within the galactic community. The war had taught them that their approach to conflict was both uniquely effective and uniquely terrifying. To other species, this knowledge came with both tremendous power and serious responsibility. The ethical implications were discussed at length. Admiral Taewon acknowledged that human methods had been brutal and that civilian populations had suffered. But he pointed out that the Vex had started the war by attempting to exterminate entire species. Human response had been proportional to the threat. Even if the method seemed extreme to observers, Commander Hyojin addressed the question that every delegate was thinking but afraid to ask directly: would humans use these same methods against other potential threats? Her answer was carefully measured. Humans preferred peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity, but they would never again allow themselves to be constrained by other species' ideas about how defensive wars should be fought. The message was clear. Without being threatening, humans wanted to be good neighbors and reliable allies. But any species that chose to threaten human worlds or human allies would face the full spectrum of human military capability, applied without restraint or mercy, until the threat was permanently eliminated. Captain So Young discussed the reconstruction efforts that humans were supporting in former Vex territory. Human engineers were helping establish basic infrastructure on worlds that wanted to rebuild. Human medical teams were providing aid to refugee populations. Human agricultural specialists were teaching sustainable farming techniques to communities. that had lost their technological base. The approach showed that human ruthlessness in war did not extend to unnecessary cruelty in peace. Humans had eliminated the Vex Empire completely, but they were not interested in making the Vex people suffer. The goal had been security, not revenge. Lieutenant Dayun presented analysis of the broader strategic situation. The elimination of the Vex Empire had created a power vacuum that various species were maneuvering to fill, but none of them wanted to appear too aggressive in their expansion. Human presence in the region served as a stabilizing force simply because no one wanted to risk human disapproval. The meeting concluded with new understandings that would shape galactic politics for centuries. Every species now knew that humans were not just another member of the interstellar community. They were a species capable of total war in ways that others could not match, comprehend, or defend against effectively. This made humans either the most valuable allies or the most dangerous enemies that any civilization could have. The choice of which relationship to pursue was entirely up to each species' individual government, but everyone understood that the choice was permanent and irreversible. Major Kyung-Ho's final report summarized the lessons that the galaxy had learned. There were some lines that should not be crossed, some threats that should not be made, some wars that should not be started, because if you pushed humans far enough they would not just defeat you, they would eliminate your civilization so completely that future generations would study your fate as a warning. The war was over, the Vex Empire was gone, the galaxy had learned what human victory looked like, and everyone involved understood that the lesson would not be forgotten. The new order was based on a simple principle. Humans wanted peace, but they were prepared for war, and when humans went to war, they fought to win permanently. The arena fell completely silent as Kim Tae-ho walked through the entrance tunnel for what everyone knew would be his final battle. After 18 consecutive victories against creatures that had killed thousands of warriors from dozens of species, the Empire had decided to deploy their ultimate weapon. The crowd of nearly 10 million spectators had traveled from across the galaxy to witness this moment. In the VIP sections, military commanders, government officials, and diplomatic representatives leaned forward in their seats. Some had come to see the human finally defeated. Others hoped to witness something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Tae-ho stepped onto the arena floor and looked around calmly. The betting displays showed odds that would have been impossible just 3 weeks ago. For the first time in the arena's history, more credits were being wagered on a prisoner than on the beast he would face. But it was not just the betting that had changed. The entire atmosphere of the arena was different. Where once there had been bloodthirsty entertainment, now there was tense anticipation. The crowd was not here to watch a slaughter. They were here to witness history. Arena